Dungeon Reaper, a light novel by Bloodmoss. Chapter 13, Should Have Lunged Sooner. The Hollow Blade Guild's training hall smelled of sweat, steel, and faintly of the takeout Penny had forbidden near the equipment. Cain adjusted the straps of the black leather armor on loan from Tara. It fit him perfectly, its worn edges and scuffed surface bearing the marks of dozens of gate runs. Though the armor clearly needed repairs, he treated it with care, knowing he had no intention of ever giving it back. Tara had seemed to understand this the moment he first put it on, and, while she hadn't said a word, Cain suspected she didn't mind, as long as he didn't let it fall apart completely. The crowd in the room was small but lively. Penny leaned casually against a rack of training swords, arms crossed and a smirk playing on her lips as she watched Cain fumble with his gear. Beside her, Tara idly spun a dagger, clearly more amused by the rookie's discomfort than anything else. Lena and Bria Jumper, the guild's flirtatious powerhouses, sat cross-legged on a bench, whispering to each other and giggling as they glanced Cain's way. Elise lounged in the corner with a steaming mug of coffee, her gaze distant as though the whole sparring match were a mild inconvenience. Reinforced mats covered the floor, their edges frayed from years of overuse. Dominating the far wall, however, was the mural, a haunting tribute to the guild's fallen founders. Griffin, Serena, Doc, and Raymond stood in stoic poses, their gazes stern and unyielding as if silently judging the trainees below. Each figure was rendered in painstaking detail, surrounded by a backdrop of shadowy monsters from the gate accident 4 years ago. The guild members often swore the mural glowered at them, especially during training, a claim Cain was starting to believe. Felix leaned casually against the nearest weapon rack, his lean frame relaxed, though his sharp gaze took in every detail of the room. His dark hair, messy in a way that somehow looked deliberate, hung just above his eyes, which sparkled with a mix of humor and challenge. He wore light leather armor, reinforced at the shoulders and arms, with faint scuffs that spoke of countless encounters. As he gestured toward the mural, a smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. "I heard about that," Felix said, pointing to the mural. "Wasn't that caused by a gate misread from Broad? Wow, what a serious fuck-up. I hope they at least fired someone." Penny crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "Yeah. Some paper pusher had a hangover, registered a Class A gate as a Class E, and my brother ate it with the entire squad." Tara, leaning against the wall with her arms folded, nodded solemnly. "That's rough, Penny, but he'd be proud of how you kept up with the place. You've done an amazing job in his stead." Felix tilted his head, glancing back at the mural. "But there are only 4. What happened to the 5th? They didn't send them in with just 4, did they?" The possibility of a surviving rank C adventurer didn't even cross his mind. Penny sighed, her gaze dropping briefly before she looked back up at the mural. "No, there was another guy with them. His name was Cain, actually. First dungeon run ever. I helped push his paperwork through as well, and I shouldn't have. We were all too overly concerned about getting dinged for missing a run rather than following the rules. His death was as much my fault as the bogus readout on the gate." She paused, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "I tried to track down any information I could find on the guy. He was from the flatlands down south, but all I could get was an old track team picture from high school. He wasn't too sociable, so I didn't have anything to go off of to add him to the mural. I thought it would be even more disrespectful to put something up there that didn't resemble him at all." Cain shifted uncomfortably, his stomach tightening as they discussed him without realizing it. Penny's gaze lingered on him, her expression softening. "You should feel attached to that guy, Cain. You guys have the same name, and you're driving his car." Cain forced a small grin, his voice steady. "Sounds like a good dude to me. Has my utmost respect." Penny nodded, her expression distant, but then shook her head as if snapping herself out of her thoughts. "All right, Bria, you ready to patch up the obvious mangling that's about to occur?" Bria laughed, stretching her arms in an exaggerated flourish. "Of course. What's a spar without a little bloodshed?" "All right, everyone, place your bets." Penny called out, breaking the growing tension with her usual brand of snark. Newbie versus our resident show-off. Who's going to walk away in one piece? Bria raised her hand immediately, her grin widening as she glanced at Grim. I got 10 creds on Grim. What can I say? Skinny tall white guys have it going on. Lena rolled her eyes. Please, Bria. Felix all the way. Grim still figuring out how not to trip over his own feet. Elise sipped her coffee, her expression calm. Felix has the experience, no question. But I don't gamble. Tara leaned against the wall, her eyes narrowing as she pointed toward the kusarigama at Grim's side. Hey, when did you get that? I don't remember seeing it before. Grim straightened, clearing his throat theatrically. I got it last night, he said, his tone suddenly adopting a deep, exaggerated Japanese inflection. From Takuma Hashizawa, Shirhan, master instructor of Kempo no Numa. A most honorable gift. The overly dramatic delivery, complete with a clumsy bow, earned a smattering of laughter from the room. Felix paused, one eyebrow raised as he stepped onto the mat. Wait, so you've never used it before? Not in a dungeon or anything? Nope, Grim said, grinning like an idiot. Never even swung the blade. But hey, a chain and a blade is a chain and a blade, right? How hard can it be? The room erupted into laughter, Bria holding up her hands. Wait, I'm changing my bet. Sorry, Grim, but Felix isn't losing to an amateur with a fancy toy. The chuckles spread, even Penny cracking a grin as she crossed her arms. All right, let's get this show started. Cain stepped toward the mat, keeping his kusarigama securely on his belt. Felix grinned, gripping his sadagarami, a weapon that resembled a short spear with curved, vicious, hooked blades at one end and a hardened spike on the other. He spun it in his hand before letting it slam into the mat with a sharp thud. Aren't you gonna draw? Cain nodded, his expression calm, and raised his hand. Mist began to swirl around him, coalescing into the form of a kusarigama. The curved blade and trailing chain appeared to be made of solidified gray mist, the chain swaying slightly as he swung it experimentally. Felix raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. Impressive. Penny clapped her hands, drawing their attention. Try not to kill each other, please. We still have to leave in an hour for the gate today. Cain began to build momentum with the heavy ball on the chain, the misty kusarigama trailing a faint, otherworldly shadow as it spun through the air. Felix took a measured step back, a smirk tugging at his lips. I guess I should let you swing that thing at least once before I take my pound of flesh. His eyes roamed over Grim's lanky frame, and his smirk widened. Quarter pound. From her corner, Tara let out a long, exasperated sigh. Oh my, that was a mistake. The tension in the room evaporated instantly. Everyone visibly relaxed, exchanging knowing glances as though the outcome of the fight had already been decided. Bria groaned, throwing her hands up. Damn, I shouldn't have changed my bet. Elise looked around, her brow furrowed in confusion. What? The fight hasn't even started yet. Cain grinned, his voice casual but laced with challenge. You should have lunged as soon as you could. The heavy ball, already having momentum, swung toward Felix at an alarming speed. Confident in his years of experience, Felix seemed completely unconcerned with the projectile. With an effortless motion, he shifted his sadagarami to intercept, a textbook-perfect block that would have worked 10 out of 10 times against any conventional weapon. He had already begun the subtle twitch of his muscles for the counterstrike, his mind 2 steps ahead. Then his eyes widened in surprise. The chain passed directly through the sadagarami, not even slowing, and continued through his entire body as if it didn't exist at all. Except it did exist. Felix felt the unmistakable, crushing numbness radiate outward from the point of contact. The draining effect hit him like a truck, stealing his strength and momentum in an instant. His lunge faltered, and Cain capitalized immediately. The chain arced sharply, looping around for a second pass. The weapon sliced through Felix's core again, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. The third swing came too fast for him to react, the ball phasing through his torso once more with devastating efficiency. Felix's legs buckled, and he dropped to his knees. His weapon slipped from his hands as his eyes began to roll back, his body unresponsive under the relentless weight of the spectral drain. "Stop." Penny's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Cain immediately froze mid-motion, the kusarigama dissipating into a wisp of gray mist as he stepped back, not even breathing hard. Felix sagged forward onto his hands, his head spinning as his body slowly began to recover. Penny rushed forward, her expression a mixture of impressed and concerned as she knelt beside Felix. Felix let out a weak croak, his voice barely audible. "Should have lunged, as soon as I could." His words trailed off as his eyes closed, and he slumped to the mat, unconscious. Bria knelt beside Felix, her hands glowing faintly as she channeled her healing abilities into him. A soft, golden light spread through his frame, and his breathing steadied as color returned to his face. "He'll be fine," she said with a reassuring smile. "Might even be back to normal by the time we get to the gate. But damn, Grim, color me impressed." Tara stepped up, nudging Grim lightly in the side with a smirk of approval. "This is definitely going into my report," she said, her tone carrying a hint of admiration for her protege. As the guild members began to disperse, the mural on the wall seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, a haunting but proud reminder of the legacy Cain was slowly becoming a part of. The van rattled along the uneven road, its interior filled with the low hum of conversation and the occasional bump of gear shifting in the back. Elise gripped the wheel with practiced ease, her gaze fixed on the road ahead as Penny sat in the passenger seat, flipping through a report on her aid tablet. Tara lounged in the back corner, her boots propped up on an old supply crate, while Felix and Cain sat across from each other in the middle seats. Felix, looking much better after Bria's healing, stretched his arms over his head with a groan. "All right, Grim, spill. What the hell did you hit me with back there?" Cain smirked, leaning back in his seat. "That? Oh, it's a little combo I call the Edgar special." Felix frowned. "I hope I never meet Edgar." Cain chuckled but said nothing, his smirk widening as Felix's gaze drifted toward the long sword at Cain's side. "A long sword?" Felix asked, raising an eyebrow. "I thought you were a different type of adventurer than that. Isn't it a bit vanilla?" Cain burst out laughing. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough. There isn't much vanilla running through these black veins." With a flourish, he unsheathed the sword and handed it to Felix, who accepted it with curiosity. Felix turned the blade in his hands, reading the single word engraved along the flat blade. "Scythe." He snorted. "Cute. I guess it goes with the whole Grim thing, right?" Cain grinned. "Look closer." Felix tilted the blade, his eyes widening as he noticed a tiny insignia etched just beneath the engraving, a delicate four-leaf clover. His voice dropped to a whisper. This is a clover? Like a real clover? Not some knockoff." From the driver's seat, Elisa's voice cut through the cabin, tinged with surprise. "What? Someone has a clover?" Tara glanced over, her tone nonchalant, but carrying a hint of pride. "That's the real deal. I delivered it myself." Felix turned to Cain, his expression incredulous. "You know Clover? Like Clover Argentis?" Cain shook his head. "Never even spoken to her. She just heard about my goals and sent me her work." Felix stared at him for a long moment before laughing softly. "You know what this is worth, right? You are a very strange man, Grim." Penny glanced back from the passenger seat, her tone dry. "You have no idea how strange." The conversation lulled as they approached the small town's elementary school. The van rolled to a stop near the playground, where a glowing baby blue gate hovered eerily in the center of the equipment, right between a slide and a jungle gym. Broad guards were stationed around the perimeter, their somber expressions setting the tone for what was to come. As the team stepped out, a broad officer approached them, his voice quiet but heavy. "The gate is small. So small, it didn't get picked up on satellite recon until it was too late. By the time we arrived, the entire town was in a panic." Penny frowned. "What's the situation?" The officer sighed. 19 kids are missing so far. From what we've gathered, it started with a dare, one of them was dared to touch the gate. After that, he trailed off, his jaw tightening. We've prepared the parents as best we can, but it'll take a miracle for any of them to have survived this long. How long has it been open? Penny asked, her tone grim. At least 14 hours, the officer replied. We were notified after around 7 a.m. when school started and a teacher saw it. She reported it immediately, but any kids who got here early? He let the words hang in the air. The team exchanged bleak looks, the weight of the situation settling heavily over them. Cain adjusted the sword at his side, Penny's lips pressed into a thin line, and Tara cracked her knuckles absently. Elise remained by the van, silent but tense. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, Penny said quietly. Let's move. The group prepared themselves, each member mentally steeling for the worst possible outcome. The gate shimmered in the playground's eerie stillness, its glow a cruel contrast to the cheerful equipment surrounding it.